Hello, welcome to Souls Intersect. This reading is for Leo Sun, Moon, or Rising signs, and it is for the month of February 2017. I'm going to take you through the cards because they're a little hard to read. From the top left, we have Temperance, the Knight of Cups, and the Fairy Stallion, which is like the Chariot in this deck. And then in the second row, the Nine of Swords, the Eight of Wands, and the Knight of Wands. And then on the bottom from the left, the Eight of Swords, the Three of Wands, and the Page of Cups. Okay, so the Eight of Wands in the center of the reading is a really nice energy. I do sense movement, especially with that Fairy Stallion as well. It's interesting, though, that you have this dichotomy between movement with the Chariot and the Eight of Wands, but then this Eight of Swords, which is in some ways a lack of movement. Usually you see it as the figure, usually female, who is sometimes bound up by the arms and her feet are not bound up, and she's usually surrounded by all 8 of those swords. The sense there usually has to do with something happening at the mental level that's preventing you from moving, even though the moving energy is there, because it is an 8. So I get the sense that something that most likely you've been waiting for, because we also have that Temperance card, and that sometimes has to do with needing to be patient around something, and sometimes even delays. And I do get the sense that there has been some sort of delay in regard to something, and now the energy is available to move forward with it, but you feel mentally blocked in some way. The Nine of Swords is also here, so that's also a strong indication that something's happening at the mental level, probably in relation to over-worrying, having too much anxiety, and not allowing yourself the freedom to be calm, essentially. Kind of what I'm picking up on is like a stage fright sort of feeling, where it's that moment. It's that kind of moment where you need to just go for it and not hesitate, and yet you can't help but hesitate. So that's very general, but that's the overall energy for this reading. Now, I do see 3 figures, so there's definitely some people involved. So let's take a look at that. One thing that I'm getting is 2 knights. To me, a lot of times when we have 2 cards that are both the same gender and both the same level in the court, a lot of times this has to do with either choosing between the 2 or being pulled in 2 different directions by 2 people. This could very well be a love interest or 2 love interests. I actually feel your energy coming through with this Page of Cups. So for me, it's not always the same element as the sign I'm reading for. It has more to do with the meaning behind the card in general. So some other characteristics of it. And so the sense that I'm getting is that it being a page, which is kind of the beginner card, if you will, sometimes younger, but also it could be beginning in terms of a stage of a series of things. So I feel you're at that stage, and it's on the emotional level. What I'm getting from that is that there probably is 2 things pulling you in different directions. And that's another thing I wanted to say, is those 2 knights could also be situations, but I definitely feel for some of you that it's 2 people. So there's that sense of them pulling you in different directions, possibly needing to choose between the 2. And I feel that you're a little emotionally distraught by it. For example, if it were the Queen of Cups, I feel I would get the sense that it is an emotional decision, but it's one that you have come to terms with or are coming to terms with, and it's not about not having the capacity to do so. My sense is that with those swords cards, you probably are focusing more on the mental aspect of it, overthinking it maybe, and not allowing your emotions to just rise to the surface and come through. So that is one of the main suggestions with this, is to try to get yourself to a point where you are following your heart, more ahead of your mind. That's kind of the sense I'm getting with that. And temperance emphasizes that too, because it's all about balancing with temperance as well. And there's a lot of water in that card. It's Sagittarius, it's fire energy. But you see her balancing the water. It's about mixing things to get them to exactly the right level. Balance, calibration. And so I think for you, what's probably going on is that you don't want to do away with that your mental faculties. Like, you do want to rely on that to make this decision, but I feel like you also have to follow your heart as well. I'm actually surprised not to see the Two of Swords, because that's almost exactly the meaning of that. But temperance shares some meaning with that as well. Balancing mind and heart, that's a strong message for this. I'm going to come back in a second to the two knights, but I want to, and also the Chariot, by the way, can be pulling in different directions. In traditional depictions, you see the two horses, usually black and white, pulling at least in different directions. But the Three of Wands is one that I haven't read yet, so let me focus on that. Okay. I feel like it's playing into a little bit some of that energy of this being a moment where there's a burst of energy, movement available, and that being held up in some way. But it includes the message of needing to build a foundation. This is where the seed has already been planted, the idea has already come to you, and you start to put the plan in action. And that's available for you along with this movement. And it could even be for some of you that's already been done. The message I'm getting from it for this reading is that, yes, for a lot of you, this, whatever this is that you need to move forward with, the seed has been planted. You have already invested something in it. You have already started to build that foundation. And so the message that's coming through intuitively is that you don't want to lose out on that, especially since you've put work into it already. And based on the reading, it feels like a lot of you might be at risk of losing that because of letting your thoughts get in the way too much, again, with the overthinking. So that's why the Three of Wands has come up as well. It just wants to remind you to, in other words, something that might help you get more into the flow of that movement energy and maybe out of that sort of stage fright energy is remembering what you've invested and also what rewards it can bring later on. But a good way to notice that is to see what you've already gained from it, because whatever you can gain in the future, it could just be doubled or tripled. We have the 3 here, so it kind of has that message in it too. Coming back to the two knights, I definitely still get the sense for some of you that it is being torn on the romantic level between two people. This came up, I think it was either Gemini or Cancer reading, so you might want to look at that, especially if it's your moon or rising sign. But I get that maybe with one person you have a little bit more emotionally invested. It might be someone you know from the past, or for whatever reason there's more of an emotional bond, and then you're drawn to someone else at the passionate level. And again, I feel that it's going to be all about balancing your mind and heart, and it might take some time. So this reading isn't telling me who to choose, for example, but that it's going to be about going inward and balancing your heart with your mind, especially with temperance coming up in the reading. The other thing with the fairy stallion is that it is water energy with the chariot, and it's next to the Knight of Cups, which is also water energy. I feel like this Knight of Cups has the stronger pull, which is kind of a repetition of what I said about having emotional investment, but it's emphasized even more here. especially with that meaning of the Chariot, that can mean the pull as well. And so that's something to watch out for when you're balancing your heart and mind. It's not to say not to choose this person, for example, but be careful of how much value you place on an emotional bond and whether you want to be placing value on that. You may want to. This isn't to say you wouldn't, but take that into consideration. That's kind of what I'm getting here. If they are situations and not people, again, I feel similar that one has more of an emotional tie for you and also maybe more emotionally fulfilling. And that's why you're more drawn to it, and it might have that stronger pull. And with the Knight of Wands, it feels like it's very similar to the read on the people, that it is more of a passionate pull, and that could also mean if it's a thing or situation that it awakens something in you creatively or even spiritually. So it seems like there is not an easy decision to be made, but you have some tools, I think, now at your disposal to help you make the decision. So if you have any questions about this general reading, or if you would like to learn more about my services, feel free to email me at soulsintersect@gmail.com. And the address to my site is in the description. On there you can read more about my services and some things about my approach as well. I also do past life readings, and there's more information on the site about those as well. All right, Leos, take care and have a good month of February.